Hello and a warm welcome. This is the news on NTA International. My name is Justin Bemwe, and here are the top stories. Federal Executive Council approves field forensic auditors for comprehensive forensic auditing of Niger Delta Development Commission (NDDC). Update on Mali crisis. ECOWAS Special Envoy, former President Goodluck Jonathan briefs President Buhari. Plus, experts say obesity increases risk of COVID-19 death by 48% as Lebanon says it could lose control of coronavirus outbreak. Well, thank you so much for joining us. The Federal Executive Council has approved the appointment of field forensic auditors to undertake a comprehensive forensic audit of the Niger Delta Development Commission (NDDC). This is in addition to the lead forensic auditors earlier appointed by the federal government in March this year. The Minister of Niger Delta Affairs, Senator Godswill Akpabio, announced this while briefing newsmen after the weekly meeting of the council presided over by President Muhammadu Buhari. A State House correspondent, Adamu Sambu, has details.
The meeting, 22nd in its series for the year 2020 and 13th to be held virtually in the new normal, lasted about 4 hours. Issues relating to the oil-rich Niger Delta dominated discussions as the Buhari presidency remains committed to dismantling obstacles to the development of the region. Consequently, approval has been granted for the appointment of 8 field forensic auditors for the NDDC, amongst them foreigners to be in charge of programs and activities at the Commission's headquarters.
This has really kick-started the commencement of evaluation and of the abandoned projects of the NDDC in the last 19 years, estimated at almost 12,000 projects. And at the end, we will be in a position to know the ones that could be completed, the ones that will be useful, the low-hanging fruits that could be plucked for the benefit of the people of the Niger Delta region. And through this exercise, we'll know the quantity, the amount of monies that had gone into the region in the last 19 years, and whether the value we have received so far are commensurate with the monies that have entered into the NDDC.
The minister attributed the delay in the commencement of the forensic audit exercise to the absence of approved budget for the NDDC and not the lack of political will. This Senator Akpabio, however, said has now been taken care of as President Muhammadu Buhari has approved that the payment for the exercise be undertaken by the presidency.
And so we thank Mr. President for not just the will, but for also undertaking to ensure the funding to make sure that this exercise comes to fruition, because it will benefit not just the Niger Delta people, but it will benefit Nigerians, and it will also give direction to a lot of agencies of government. The involvement of the internationally and globally recognized forensic auditors will help us to checking whether there were issues of misappropriation, bribery, corruption, fraud, or anything of that sort that could have militated against the success of the agency in the last 19 years. And also to set up modalities to avoid future fraud, and then also set up governance structure that will not only move the NDDC forward, but will bring much more benefits to the people of the region.
An estimated 2.5 billion naira has already been approved for the exercise by the president, out of which 318 million naira has been earmarked for the lead forensic auditors, while 722.3 million naira for the newly appointed field forensic auditors. The Federal Executive Council also approved the revised estimated total cost of consultancy services for the ongoing Ogbese Multipurpose Dam project in Ekiti State.
This project is one of the 116 projects we inherited. It was started in 2009, and it is one of the projects we prioritize for completion since we conducted an audit of all the ongoing projects in 2016. With the original contract period having expired having also received approval for the RETC for the actual construction of the project, the main works, it was important that we also extend the services of the project consultant so that there will be continued and uninterrupted effective supervision of the project.
An augmentation of 101 million naira has therefore been approved for the consultancy services by the council, as well as an extension of 24 months for the execution of the project aimed at enhancing water supply, hydropower, irrigation and fisheries development. From the State House, Adamu Sambu, NTA News.
In the meantime, 12 newly appointed permanent secretaries have been sworn in to fill existing vacancies in the Federal Civil Service. The swearing-in ceremony performed by President Muhammadu Buhari preceded the weekly meeting of the Federal Executive Council. And again, State House correspondent Adamu Sambu reports.
Emerged from a rigorous screening exercise, including a written examination, ICT competency test, as well as an oral interview, the new permanent secretaries represent 12 out of the 16 states where vacancies existed. They are Dr. Emmanuel Chukwuemeka Meribol Abia, Dr. Yerima Peter Tarfa Adamawa, Dr. Ifoma Adora Anya Utaku Anambra, Dr. Antonia Akpabio Ekpa Cross River, Dr. Babayo Ardo Kumo Gombe, and Babangida Husseini Jigawa. Also sworn in were Bashir Nuhu Alkali Kano, Dr. Oluwa Toin Akinlade Kogi, Dr. Shuaib Muhammad Lamido Belgore Kwara, Udo Monilola Omokumi Oyo, Ali Uganda Muhammad Sokoto, and Mahamuda Mamman Yobe. President Buhari also swore in 2 commissioners, Idahagbong Williams Omorige Henry for the Federal Civil Service Commission and Usman Mahamud Hassan for the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission. The swearing-in ceremony was devoid of speeches, but the head of the Civil Service of the Federation, Dr. Folashade Yemi Esong, speaks on the government's expectations from the new appointees.
I think the first thing is that they must serve with a lot of integrity, and they must also make sure that the promises of Mr. President get to the people. That is the function of the bureaucracy, and if they are leading the bureaucracy in all their ministries, then they must ensure that Mr. President's promises get to the citizens of Nigeria.
And what are the promises?
The first one is on security. Whatever ministry a permanent secretary is, we need to be able to talk to our own people also to ensure that our states are very, very secure.
Some of the permanent secretaries spoken to by NTA News promised to live above board in discharging their responsibilities.
We have pledged to deliver on the mandate of Mr. President. I promised that we shall do our level best to ensure that we commit ourselves to our oath of allegiance and oath of office.
Mr. President has his 9 priority areas, so it's our work to ensure that we fulfill these mandates given to us by Mr. President. So we are going to do all we can to ensure that Mr. President's policies are translated to the people and we give them good service delivery.
The permanent secretaries were appointed from the various eligible directors in the federal ministries, departments and agencies. From the State House, Adamu Sambu, NTA News.
Still from the State House, President Muhammadu Buhari has received briefings from ECOWAS Special Envoy to the West African country, former President Goodluck Jonathan, where he said the priority in the Republic of Mali now should be securing the country, which is largely occupied by terrorists. The meeting came ahead of an extraordinary virtual summit by ECOWAS heads of state and leaders scheduled for Friday. In a statement by the special advisor to the President, Media and Publicity, President Buhari said the sub-region would take a common position on the issue when the leaders meet on Friday, hoping that an amicable and generally acceptable position to all interested parties would be arrived at. Dr. Jonathan brought the president up to speed on dialogue with the military coup leaders who are seeking to stay in power for 3 years before holding elections. The interim government would then organize elections to restore full constitutional order. Dr. Jonathan disclosed that his team was allowed to meet with the ousted president, who confirmed that he resigned voluntarily, adding that he was no longer interested in returning to his former position. He added that the military leaders want ECOWAS to lift sanctions put in place, as it was already affecting the country. President Muhammadu Buhari has approved the appointment of chief executive officers for 9 of the agencies under the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture. According to the approval letter, which was conveyed to the Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, by Professor Ibrahim Gambari, Chief of Staff to the President, Mr. Buki Punle was appointed Managing Director of the News Agency of Nigeria. Mr. Nura Sani Kangiwa, Director General, National Institute for Hospitality and Tourism. Mr. Francis Ndubuisi Nwosu, Executive Secretary, Nigerian Press Council. Mr. Ebiton William Ivara, Director General, National Gallery of Arts. Mr. Olalekon Fadolapo, Registrar and CEO of Advertising Practitioners Council of Nigeria, and Professor Sunday Enisi Ododo, General Manager and CEO, National Theatre. And others are Mr. Ado Mohamed Yahuza, Executive Secretary and CEO, National Institute for Cultural Orientation, Professor Abba Isa Tijani, Director General, National Commission for Museums and Monuments, and Mrs. Oluwabumi Ayobami Amao, Director General, Center for Black and African Arts and Civilization. The appointments take effect from 1st September 2020. The presidency has responded to the National Bureau of Statistics figures published on Monday, August 24, 2020, on the second quarter of 2020 gross domestic product estimates, which measures economic growth.
During the quarter under review, it outperformed projections by most domestic and international analysts. The senior special advisor to the President on Media and Publicity, Femi Adesina, says the government's anticipation of the impending economic slowdown and the various initiatives introduced as early responses to cushion the economic and social effects of the pandemic through the Economic Sustainability Program, ESP, contributed immensely to dampening the severity of the pandemic on growth. On the fiscal side, Femi stated that a robust financing mechanism was designed to raise revenue to support humanitarian assistance, in addition to special intervention funds for.
The African Development Bank is currently holding its 2020 annual meeting, building that was delayed due to COVID-19 pandemic. The bank will as well hold an election for the office of its president, with the incumbent Akunwumi Adesina of Nigeria running as the sole candidate for a new 5-year term. Dr. Adesina, while welcoming the executive of the AFDB to the annual meeting, says for several months the bank has been extending support to regional member countries in cushioning their economies, health systems and citizens' livelihoods from parallel health and economic impacts from COVID-19. It says in April this year, the bank established a COVID-19 response facility of up to $10 billion to extend flexible support to African sovereign and non-sovereign operations. As of August, he disclosed that $2.29 billion funding had been approved for ADB member countries. You're watching the news on NTA International. We'll take a short break now. The news continues in a moment. Do stay with us. Now let's take a look at the environment where the Nigeria Hydrological Services Agency says flood levels at the hydrological stations monitored in Niamey, Niger Republic and Malanville, Benin Republic have gotten to the red alert zone. This has already caused flooding in the middle Niger of the Niger Basin made up of Niger, Benin, Burkina Faso and parts of Mali. This flood magnitude cited in Niamey on 23rd August 2020 is expected to arrive Nigeria through Kebbi State around 6th of September 2020. States on the bank of the river Niger are to expect river flooding. The states include Kebbi, Niger, Kwara, Nasarawa, Kogi, Anambra, Delta, Edo, Rivers and Bayelsa. In the event there is release of excess water from the dams in other countries upstream, Rivers, Niger and Benue this year, Nigeria, which is located downstream other countries in the Niger Basin, will be impacted negatively. NIHSA also warns that with many more days of rainfall, more flash floods are also expected in the months of August, September and October this year. In a statement issued by the Nigeria Hydrological Services government, community leaders and individuals are advised to clear blocked drainages, gutters and river channels, while structures within the waterways, floodplains and flood paths should be pulled down to mitigate impact of the flood. And now I have in the studio Director General Nigeria Hydrological Services Agency, Dr. Clement Oyeaso Nze, to shed more light on this anticipated flood. Glad to have you join us in the studio.
Thank you. Once again, my pleasure to be here.
Well, let's go straight to the point. Can you elaborate on your recent flood red alert for Nigeria?
Okay, like in the intro, the location of Nigeria is downstream of all the countries in the Niger Basin, made up of 9 countries. Nigeria is at the bottom. The flood level in Niamey is a reference point to determine what is going to happen in Nigeria. So Niamey is within the middle Niger. There are 4 sections. Upper Niger, inland delta, which is in Mali. Upper Niger is in Guinea. Middle Niger is in Niger with other countries, and then Nigeria is in lower Niger. So once the middle Niger is flooded, like it is already happening right away, Nigeria will be expecting to have its own share of the flood incidents. Like is mentioned, on the 23rd, being Sunday, this month of August, the flood level in Niamey was over 6.6 meters high. And it will be evolving, cascading down to Nigeria. It has a time of propagation to get into Nigeria. And the Kebbi State is the first point in Nigeria through which River Niger enters into the country. So that is why we have to give that a red alert.
Okay. Now, you know, after the August dry spell, it appears the rains are back with greater intensity. Should this be a concern for Nigerians?
Definitely, it should be. The rains are back in most cities of Nigeria. Like here in Abuja, I think more than 2-3 hours it's been raining since late afternoon. The soil is already saturated in so many places now. Any more rainfall coming is likely to translate into flooding. And for instance, what we mentioned, what we have been passing through since June till date have been mainly urban flooding, occasioned by lack of adequate drainages or interfering with the water course, flood paths. But from the red alert we received, we should be expecting river flooding.
Okay.
As of today, both Kainji and Jeba dams are spilling water in preparation to receive the excess volume coming down from Niamey.
So with this red alert you've given to Nigerians, what measures can be taken to avoid more damages and loss of lives to the flood?
We continue with advocacy. State governments should help their citizens, state governments, communities. People living within the flood banks or river banks should relocate. Oftentimes, the flood arrives at night when people are asleep. Government should help the citizens in the states already implicated in this prediction to move away from the flood paths, remove structures that already interfering with the free flow of excess runoff or flood. We have to be careful, individuals as well, to safeguard their lives and also property.
Okay, Dr. Clement Nze, thank you so much for joining us on the news this evening.
Thank you for having me once again.
Well, that was the Director General Nigeria Hydrological Services Agency. Now, moving on to health matters. Recent study finds obesity increases risk of COVID-19 death by 48%, and Lebanon says it could lose control of coronavirus outbreak. Now, let's join Joyce Ometu for an update on the global pandemic.
The Nigeria Center for Disease Control and CDC says the number of confirmed COVID-19 cases have risen to 52,800, out of which 39,964 patients have recovered. The country unfortunately has registered 1,007 fatalities from the virus. Lagos State, the epicenter of the virus, has 18,018 cases. FCT comes second, recording 5,046 cases. Oyo State follows with 3,058 cases. Continent-wide, Africa has a total of 1,209,002 cases of COVID-19, with 28,356 fatalities and 934,741 recoveries. As at 6 p.m. Nigeria time, record by Worldometer show that global cases have reached 24,161,368, while 825,479 infected persons have died. A comprehensive study by leading global health experts reveal that obesity increases the risk of death from COVID-19 by nearly 50% and may make vaccines against the disease less effective. The research warns that the risk for people with obesity are greater than previously thought. Meanwhile, Iran's death toll from COVID-19 has exceeded 21,000. Iran's top health officials have appealed to Iranians to avoid traveling during the Shia Muslim religious holiday of Ashura later this week to avoid the risk of fresh surge of infections. In the meantime, Lebanon's caretaker Prime Minister Hassan Diab said the country is at risk of losing control over the coronavirus outbreak following the August 4 explosion in the capital, Beirut. In a statement, Diab said cases are surging, and if this continues, Lebanon will lose control of the outbreak. And that's a global update on COVID-19. Thanks for watching. I am Joyce Ometu.
Now, the management of the NTA has noted with concern the inaccurate and fallacious story being circulated by some online media outfits and some newspapers, to the effect that it has been ordered by the Senate Committee on Finance to step aside. This claim is wholly untrue and thrives only in the realm of malice and mischief. For the avoidance of any doubts, NTA as a corporate body and public broadcaster is not under the radar of the Senate through its Committee on Finance. What has been looked at is the NTA Star Joint Venture, a limited liability cable television company formed in 2009 and jointly owned by both the NTA and Star Times. The company has its own management, which is independent of and entirely different from the management of the NTA. This management has appeared before the Committee on Invitation and presented documents as requested. The management of the NTA, headed by the Director General Yakubu Ibn Mohammed, is intact, has not been asked to step aside, and is performing his day-to-day activities without let or hindrance. The All Progressives Congress has commenced progresses towards recording victory at the concurrent legislative by-elections in 8 states across the country. Caretaker and Extraordinary National Convention Planning Committee of the party has inaugurated the screening and appeal committees ahead of the elections. Saleh Abdullahi reports.
This is ahead of the October 31st concurrent legislative by-elections scheduled by the Independent National Electoral Commission to hold in Imo, Borno, Lagos, Plateau, Zamfara, Kogi, Bayelsa, and Cross River states. Caretaker committee of the party urged members of the committees to see their role as strategic and ensure a credible exercise in the interest of the aspirants.
The job of selecting credible candidates for those elections begins with you. The national chairman, His Excellency Honorable Mai Balabuni, and the entire leadership of the party are committed to free and transparent process that will produce acceptable candidates.
Some of the committee members see the task as another opportunity to positively impact the APC.
Dispensing justice, equity within the party. So this is what they are expecting each and every one of us in the committee. We will be just, we will be equitable, we will be honest in the manner we are going to preside over the affairs of the committee that we are assigned.
Cross River section is a place that we really have to focus on to be able to win. And then what we need to do here to give credence to it is to be able.
Screening of aspirants has commenced behind closed door at the party's national secretariat in Abuja. Salihu Abdullahi, NTA News.
In the meantime, stakeholders of the All Progressives Congress from Adamawa State have resolved to work to strengthen the party in the state. The delegation of stakeholders was led to the party's national secretariat in Abuja by the only APC senator in Adamawa State, Aisha Binami. Addressing journalists at the end of the closed-door session with the chairman, caretaker and extraordinary National Convention Planning Committee, Mai Malabuni, Senator Binani speaks on the efforts being made to return Adamawa State to the Progressives family.
That is the destiny of Adamawa State. For APC to rule Adamawa State from 2015 to 2019, and then is a destiny for Adamawa State, for PDP to rule Adamawa State from 2019. As I'm talking to you till now, I don't know what will happen tomorrow. I can authoritatively tell you that between the stakeholders in Adamawa State and the party officials and the elected representative, we don't have any crisis.
Forwards on the entourage are 7 members of the National Assembly from Adamawa, including the state chairman of the party. And this is where the news ends, but before we go, remember to connect with NTA and stand against rape and rapists. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Justin.